A very good morning to all of you. On behalf of TCS ION, I welcome you all to this webinar. Distributed Leadership, that is DL, approach talks about leadership along with teams, groups, and organizational characteristics. In practice, this leadership style objects the assumption that an individual in authority must take the decision and lead in order to implement a change. People who support this idea believe that distributed leadership is required since educational institutions are too complex to be managed by only one individual. The responsibility for managing various complex tasks in organizations is distributed among a myriad of individuals with different roles. A distributed leadership perspective is not a recipe or a blueprint for practice. It is a framework or theory for focusing diagnostic work and a guide to help people design and improve practice. It is about practice and improvement. This changes the way principals interact with their staff from a dictatorship approach to that of an engagement through the practice of collectively leading and managing teaching and learning. School staff become a key agent in diagnosing and designing work for improvement. It is my absolute pleasure and an honor to welcome and introduce our guest speaker who is here with us today. Mrs. Sapru holds a master's degree in chemistry and in education and a postgraduate diploma in school leadership management. She is a keen learner. She has completed the online certificate course in multiple intelligence theory program from Harvard University, USA, and Global Career Catalyst program, that is GCC, conducted by the University of California, Los Angeles, that we know as UCLA. She has also attended residential course at IIM Ahmedabad on strategic leadership management. She has been the principal of the Heritage School since 2007. She is on the advisory board of various educational organizations and is on the panel of inspectors for affiliation to the Council for the Indian School Certificate Examinations, New Delhi. She is a master trainer for the subject chemistry for Council for the Indian School Certificate Examinations, New Delhi. She has been awarded several awards, the latest being Principal of the Year India by India Today and NDTV Education Award. We welcome you, Seema ma'am. So, ma'am, it's an absolute pleasure to have you with us today. We will just begin our discussion on distributed leadership. Seema ma'am, I have briefly described distributed leadership in theory. With your rich experience, can you please help us understand what practically distributed leadership is and why is it important to practice it in schools and educational institutions?
So, you see, there are four main stakeholders in a school, and I'm going to talk to you about it as per my experience, whatever I've had my experience in schools. So, there are four main stakeholders in a school. It's the school management, the students, parents, and teachers. So, when a teacher joins the school, she has to be made a part of the decision making by orienting her in conformity with the vision and mission of the school. That's important. So the teacher ideally should transact the curriculum in the classroom, because remember, it's the teacher who's in the classroom. It's not me. It's not the school management. So teacher should ideally transact the curriculum in the classroom in keeping with the ethos and the philosophy the school stands for. Now let us remember once again that I, as a principal of the school management, we directly interact with students, say, in the assembly or one teaching period. At all other times, it is the teacher who is influencing the students with her ideas. So she has to be a mini representative of the institution. So there are teachers who take up this responsibility very willingly, and it comes naturally to them. But there are others who have to be trained and they have to be empowered to do so. So distributed leadership, as far as I understand, is that you give authority, you give responsibility. Say, for example, um, you know, we start something new in school. Say, if there's an assessment system where we feel that this assessment system is going to be very useful for the school, but the teachers don't think it is very useful, and they don't think this is the right kind of assessment. This is going to only increase our work, and the management is forcing us to do something. So when parents and students question them about it, you see what happens is, say for example, a report card is being given, an assessment is happening. So parents don't directly, everybody doesn't come and meet us. So people will meet me only when the teachers cannot solve their issues. So they go and speak to the teachers, and the teachers may say, well, the school has decided this new assessment system. Please ask the principal, she will be able to help. I don't know much about it. So if you think about your own children, if they go to school and the teacher tells them this, that she doesn't have the faith in whatever has been decided for the school, then it gives a very wrong message to parents and to everyone in the community. So basically, distributed leadership would mean all of us collaboratively come together, take decisions, and then we go to classrooms and we become mini representatives of our own institution, and then we transact curriculum from there. That's what I understand as a, from an education point of view.
What I also feel is that when you mention that teacher is the face of the institution, we always think that, okay, now during the lockdown period, since the school is not working, why do teachers go to school? Because the students are not coming. We always look at it as a very singlistic approach, very single mindedly, that if there is no students, then there is no need for a teacher and management to go back to school. So that's what we will explore further in detail, which brings me to my next question. There is a concern that in distributed leadership practice, the leaders become redundant as it moves authority away from an individual and it dilutes the purpose of one leader. What is your thoughts on this, ma'am?
You see, when it comes to schools, in schools you have highly educated people with high intellect. You see, because teachers are all experts in their own areas, and if you treat them meanly, their esteem is hurt. You have to accept that they are subject experts, and the head of the school is also a teacher, expert in her own area of administration and her subject of specialization. She is not anything different, or she is not anything different from the teacher. She is basically a teacher, and she can't possibly be the best at everything. Please remember, if my subject is science and mathematics, or if somebody else's subject is English and history, I can't possibly have a master over everything. So I believe that ownership should be shared by everyone. That is the basic idea. Everyone, when we meet together, when we take decisions, everyone has a say in it, and everybody shares the ownership. So my view about a leader is very, very different. So I think instead of becoming redundant, actually the principal or the leader is in each and every member of staff. She is a representative, or each staff member is a representative of the school. So her presence or absence in the school shouldn't make much of a difference, because the training and the collaborative work that has been done, it should percolate down. So, like, it's a very, very small simple example. Say there's a disciplined class in the absence of a teacher, and I'm taking around, maybe you as a parent or somebody as an outsider visitor takes around, and you see that there's no teacher in the class, but the children are they're either reading books or they're playing board games quietly during the time, in between two teaching periods. What does it show? It shows that in the absence of a teacher, the efficacy and the involvement of the teacher is so much that her presence or absence doesn't make much of a difference, because the children have been nurtured and trained very, very well, and they know what has to be done because the instructions have been given already. So, this is how a teacher resides in each student. So, instead of becoming redundant, she is actually everywhere. So, and of course, I would like to add here that, you know, Adam Smith and division of labor is a very apt example of distributed leadership. Distributed leadership. Um, so, what I would understand is both authority and responsibility has to be given down the line, and people, everyone, has to be a part of decision making. That is how distributed leadership happens, and I think in schools that would really, really help.
Thank you, ma'am. I completely agree that when you say that everybody in an institution are supposed to think of themselves as a part of leadership and then implement each and every strategy that is planned out. What are the educational leadership challenges and limitations in the modern education system of 21st century?
Okay, so what happens is, there's been a paradigm shift in the education system, and keeping up with the latest trends requires dedicated teachers and leaders. Now, let's look at teachers, say about 20 years ago, 25 years ago, 30 years ago. At the time, people like me started our careers. So, what had happened was we were called as teachers. Now, the terminology has changed in the last few years, and so it's a very glamorous way of calling teachers. They're called educators, they're called facilitators, they're called catalysts, and they're called change makers. And I'm not too sure. In fact, I doubt if teachers are actually allowed to become any of the above. For you need training to become change makers. You can't become change makers just like that, because your B.Ed colleges or your schools or your colleges where you study, they're not training you to become teachers in the classroom. B.Ed does teach you a lot of stuff, but practicality is very different from theory. Apart from that, see, now what has happened is, since you've asked in the 21st century and what is happening today, see, classrooms have reached homes. If any one of you or most of you are parents, you are present at the time when the teacher is taking the class. Everything is getting recorded. Like, it is, our program is getting recorded as of now, so I have to be very careful what I say just now. So sometimes I feel that the teachers are a little hesitant to crack jokes, because I remember we were in school as students, as teachers, we would ask our teacher, who's your favorite actor, and ma'am, please tell us a joke. And as a teacher, even I've done a whole lot of stuff. Now there are CCTV cameras, and of course, as I said, the classroom has reached home. So talking to them, um, just about serious academics, can get very boring, and the spontaneity of teaching is lost. So what happens is, teachers are so spontaneous. They say, okay, fine, we'll play a game today. Let's start with a game. But then if everything is being recorded, that's a little bit of a, you know it's a sad thing that happens to us. Another point of contention is the poor salary paid, because of which teaching is not an aspirational job for the current lot of students. Now, I must say that people also realize that there's far too much work and not that much respect, and low salaries. So, there are some well known good schools where salaries are paid as per the government recommendation. All schools, it doesn't happen like that. Another thing is that the infrastructure required for quality education is missing in a lot of schools. So, pardon my saying that there is too much of commercialization of education somewhere. Of course, we want sustainability of educational institutions is of immense importance. I mean, you can't run a big school without, or small school, whatever, without funds. But you can't have it as a money making business project. And franchises are opening everywhere as business models. It's a sad thing. Another point which is a little bit of a you know um, upsetting for teachers is that there's a plethora of knowledge made available to students. So teachers have to be not just guides and facilitators, they also have to make sure that children have to be able to sift the knowledge correctly, and they have to guide them and tell them exactly how they go about learning, because there's far too much of knowledge and poor children don't know what to pick and what to leave. So that also is a teacher's responsibility. And last but not the least, your child rights are very, it's a very good beginning, and we are very happy that there are people, teachers cannot you know uh, punish children, and they can't speak rudely to them. It's a very good beginning, but I think somebody should look at teachers rights also. That's my last point, as far as this is concerned, because in the 21st century we all getting very happy, feeling very happy about students being empowered, but somebody has to think about teacher empowerment also. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. I think the last point you made is going to be very important because teachers also have to be empowered. And I completely agree when you said that there is a plethora of knowledge available online today, and children can go pick up any link, any video they want to see. What's right and wrong is up to the teacher to lead them also through that. Um, that brings me to my next question. There are many leadership models available. Why do you think that distributed leadership is the best model to be adopted? And in which situations this model can be used in schools? And in which situations it cannot be used in schools?
So I had mentioned it earlier also that in schools you deal with highly educated people with high intellect and expertise and things like that. So in the other leadership styles, you either require complete democracy, or you're authoritative, or you're bureaucratic. The styles are different. But for people like us in this profession, um, you know there's a lot of hand holding and scaffolding required when you come new to this profession. See, because you've been a student all along, even in your B.Ed, you are actually a student learning how to teach, but you actually don't become a teacher. So there is a small part of it where you have to go and practice teaching, but you actually, a class where you go and teach is something that is told to us in a B.Ed class, but you are not told that you go to a class and nobody wants to study and children are going to throw paper balls at you. That is not taught in the class in your B.Ed. So what happens is you have to be very good, um, very effective at communicating and handling students. um, Handling parents is a science and an art. It's a science and an art, it's a mixture of the two. So in distributed leadership, teachers take onus of decisions on themselves, and that is why it is important that in schools distributed leadership is what is practiced. So what happens is there are a lot of advantages of this. First is people are willing to learn, because once you take everybody together, so the willingness to learn is there. There's less resistance. They like to change and move on to something new. There is less competition and more support for each other, because when they sit together they like to help each other and say, okay, fine, this could be a better idea and things like that. That happens. So new trends can be brought about easily. Also there is transparency in working relations, because since everybody knows what the work has been assigned to whoever. So it doesn't happen that one teacher is called and told in private that you will do this work, don't tell this to anyone. No, it's a distributed leadership, everybody is a leader. And the fact that each teacher, when she walks into the class, she has a whole lot of children in the class. So she is the at that point of time, she is the leader who makes a lot of leaders, not followers. So that is how I believe distributed leadership is all about. A leader with a team of a lot of leaders. And that is why it works very well. So distributed leadership can't be used with new, inexperienced teachers, and with teachers who don't have the belief and faith in the school ethos. What happens is, there are people who, if I'm Seema Sapru, I go everywhere as Seema Sapru. I don't go as the principal of the heritage school. So, what every at each time that I speak, I have to speak with this in mind, that I am a representative of the heritage school. I'm the principal, and I have to believe, and only if I have faith in the school philosophy, vision, and mission, only can then I represent the school correctly. So that's what is my understanding of this question.
Thank you. Thank you very much, ma'am. Eventually, I'm sure everybody agrees that student learning and student achievement is the main motto for the leadership team, for the teachers, for the parents, and everyone. How does the practice of distributed leadership impact teachers' expectation and how it impacts students' achievements?
Okay. Yes, I think this is a very, very important question, because at the end of the day, we are looking at the outcome. So, teachers, once it is distributed leadership, it's not that we're telling everybody, oh, I'm distributing this leadership to everybody, but they know that they taking up responsibilities and working hard is being noticed and is being rewarded. So, and for that, you have to have 360 degrees appraisal, which should happen for all teachers. So, teachers who have been in the school, the homegrown teachers, they get opportunity to grow. And that is why the attrition level is very low in such schools, because teachers know, if I work hard, if I am here for a longer period of time, I will get the opportunity to become a senior person. I will move up in the hierarchy. So, this 360-degree appraisals that I'm talking about, they also understand that this exercise is going to help them grow, and we are not doing that to pick out mistakes. We give very, very constructive feedback, such that teachers become more effective and more productive in the classroom, and that is what is required. Let us understand that students are very, very receptive. They're very observant, very receptive. So they respect people who can take decisions, who don't run to the immediate reporting authority for everything. Ma'am, my children are not listening to me, so please come and see that there's discipline in the class. Ma'am, I can't complete the syllabus, or I'm leaving. Children don't respect such people. And unless the teacher is empowered, unless the teacher knows that this is my weak point, this is my strength, and this is how I've been pointed out, I've been told about this, so I will work on it to become better on this. So, if all of us, together, teachers, if we take a collaborative approach in everything we do, we always do it well, and academic results and co-curricular achievements are, for everyone to see. So, this is just an example. Let's say, for example, in our school, what happens is that, there are 8 sections. So, in 8 sections, if, one teacher, generally, I remember it used to happen in my time, the school would say, the teachers, parents would go and say, I want my son or my daughter to be only in Section A. Section B is not very good, or Section F is very poor. What we've done is, if there are 8 teachers, all 8 teachers sit together, and all the material and resources of all 8 teachers are put together. The resources are put together, and the same thing is taught in each class, and the same PowerPoint, the same questions, the same answers, the same movie video, everything is the same in all sections. So I have never received any complaint from anyone that, section A teacher is doing very well and section B teacher is not teaching well, or this particular activity was done in this class, in this section, and was not done in the other section. So all of us, we make sure that best practices are being translated into being followed by everyone, and that's how we run our school. And I think that is how everyone, I wouldn't say everyone, each one has a different way of running the school. It has helped us, it has been good for us, it may not be good for the others. So that's what I would like to say.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm sure that the unified plan that you mentioned, that every teacher sits together and they come up with a plan, and that's what they implement in the classroom. That's something that anyone from our audience, if they are listening and they would like to implement that, I feel that it's a very effective method for teaching in their respective schools as well. I would like to open the forum for the audience to post questions that you may want to ask regarding distributed leadership to Seema ma'am. There is a question and answer section. There's a chat window where you could post your questions for us, and we would be happy to take these questions and have a discussion with ma'am. While you add these questions, ma'am, there's one question that I'd like to pose to you. What are the main benefits that you feel that you have got out of the practical implementation of distributed leadership?
You see, teachers know that they are a part of the decision making. So, and any and every suggestion given by teachers is taken very seriously, because there is no wrong suggestion, there is no wrong, um, opinion. All of us sit together, and at times, the first, um, you know, suggestion that comes up, everybody may say that, oh no, this is not possible. But then why not? Let's try. Let's try something which is difficult. Let's do it. And in any case, where there is always, the same monotonous kind of work going on, there's no fun. Let's have a little bit of chaos. Let's see. Let's have a few arguments. Let's have a few discussions. And then whatever comes out of it is good fun. Everybody loves it. Everyone loves it. And I think we are very happy that way. In fact, I have never ever taken a decision without consulting my coordinators, my headmaster, headmistress. No, never. In fact, if I take it, they'll come and scold me. Ma'am, we didn't know about this. So, not scold me in the sense, but well, we will have a discussion. So, if they take a decision, I get after their lives. They can't take a decision. Nobody can take a decision alone in our school. We will sit together, because there's so many. See, one brain, one mind working, and 20 people working together. Everybody sees, each one of us has some point of view or the other. And there are people who are very good at picking out mistakes. And there are some people who are very good at, always saying no to everything. And they always have a very good reason to say no. So those things, prepare us for questions that would be asked by our parents and students later, or maybe the school management. That's how we prepare ourselves. I think we've done with our time.
Thank you, ma'am. We have a question from the audience. How do you prefer to communicate with your staff or team in the verbal or written mode of communication?
Both,
So, what do you prefer?
both. Actually, it depends. When you need work done, which is, serious work done, which can be sent to everyone, we actually, all work done is in um, Generally in writing. When delegations happen, it is in writing, very transparent, and it's everybody's name is written, and it goes as a notice to everyone. But you see, there are certain sensitive issues. You can't give it in writing at times. You feel that there are some people who, and in a school we're dealing only with people, and very educated, uh, and teachers are basically very sensitive people. So you appreciate, like they say, appreciate in public, and you talk about weaknesses in private. So that's what we do. So if we have to appreciate people, we do it publicly, and we write it down, and we do whatever kind of things. And if there are certain things where teachers need to be told, which is a little sensitive, and so you have to call them to the office and speak to them and tell them nicely whatever is required. So it depends. It depends on in the individual and on the issue that we're talking about.
Thank you, ma'am. We have got quite a few questions from the audience. It's a very small request to all the audience. When you're sending the questions, please send your name along with it, and also if your institution name, if possible, and we will take up these questions. Ma'am, the next one that I have for you is, what qualities do you look for with respect to this as in a distributed leadership topic when you are hiring a teacher?
Uh, See, we talk about the ask concept. Everybody talks about the AKS concept. I'm sure you've heard of AKS concept, where we talk about, the A is for attitude, K is for knowledge, and S is for skills. So you see, you can see the skills and knowledge. You can see when the person comes in. The CV itself says the whatever the teacher's qualifications are and experiences are, whatever. It's the attitude which is the most difficult part to change. We train people, and so knowledge and skills can be acquired over a period of time. Sometimes it becomes a little difficult to change the attitude. Sometimes, I'm not saying all the time. There are some people who are very fixed in their ideas, and they feel that whatever we studied in school, that is the right thing, and anything that happens here, and children are all very badly behaved these days, and whatever. So that becomes difficult, because I think whatever children are doing today, it is because we have trained them to do that. We are today whatever our teachers and our parents did to us, and the way they treated us. So we are like that, and what we have done to the current generation, they are like that. So let's not blame them, let's blame ourselves for it. So we look at the attitude. So we do have a counseling team who also talk to them, and so we have a lot of interaction with them, and only then do we hire teachers. Of course, knowledge is very important, as I said, skills are important, but that can be seen, and attitude takes a little more time. So we have to make sure that people are with a pleasant state of mind and happy frame of mind, and they like teaching. That's very important.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. We have the next question from Nafisa Nawaz. For a newly established school, does centralization or distributed leadership work practices work? Which one is more helpful for a newly established school?
So, ma'am, it all depends on the newly established school. I don't know if you have experienced teachers, if you have absolute novices. I have no idea. And see, in a newly established school, also, you have to look at the vision and mission of the school and try and find out who are the people who you can trust and delegate a responsibility. Maybe initially you can give something to each one of them, and find out how each one responds, and how, because there are some people who are very bright, they have excellent ideas, but their submission deadlines are a little bit of an issue. Some people are very hardworking, but they don't have very good ideas. So it is always a mix, and you should never give anything in the beginning Don't give it to one person. Make groups of three. Groups of three. Three of you start something like this. Three of you do this. Four of you do this. And why I'm saying this is because, initially everybody's a little scared also to, say that I have done this. If there are three, four people, at least they'll take, joint responsibility, that if it was something right, then they take up, then they feel appreciated and feel happy. If it was something wrong, then it doesn't feel that bad, and there's nothing wrong actually. It all depends on us as leaders to say that this is wrong, this is right. I mean, there's nothing wrong and there's nothing right, because if you have a reason to substantiate what you're saying, and if you have, if you can validate with some kind of a proof that what you've written is right, or what you've suggested has happened, and it has been, it has been seen that in the past it has worked, there's no harm in trying out something. And I think, yes, make groups, give work, a lot work to them.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm sure, I hope, Nafisa, that this answers your query. The next question that we have is from Aditya from GRP School. How should a leader respond to criticism?
You see, leaders are going to be criticized, and you have to take it in your stride. You think we don't get criticized every day? Somebody or the other must be saying that. Criticism is a part of growing up, it's a part of your growth. My only thing is that find out whoever has criticized, you talk to them. Don't get angry with them. Talk to them, say, how can I improve myself? What I would suggest, what I do also is, we have appraisals. So I send it to my coordinators and HODs and teachers and say that, write about me. And we write, and there are no names written. You don't have to write your names. Everything is written already. You just have to tick. So nobody can make out who's written what. So teachers don't have to be scared that I'm writing for the principal that she's no good and whatever. But we have to find out where are we going wrong and what is wrong with that. Not in this job, maybe in the next job I'll be a better principal. So there's nothing wrong with criticism. I think it's very important to take criticism in your stride and say, fine, I have done something wrong. Let me not repeat it. I've done it. I'm sorry. What is wrong with that?
Thank you, ma'am. I think that was very honest and transparent response that I have heard to such a question so far. The next question I have from Pratibha from Amity University. Being a pre-service teacher, I would like to ask that how can we empower our teachers?
Okay. So, you see, I what I understand is, people work for as much time and for as much salary that's given to them. There are very few people who give back to the institution more than what the salary and the time given to them is. I mean, as per that, the ratio of give and take relationship is maybe equal to or less than what is the institution gives them. So I think the first thing you need to do is, in case you are teaching a math subject or science subject or English or psychology or whichever is your subject, whatever subject, make sure that you are absolutely, um, you have an expertise. Your classroom has to be very, very lively. At the same time, please remember that there are teachers who I've seen, their um, classrooms are very, very lively and children enjoy their classes, but they never complete their syllabus. And the route map that is there, the table, the our lesson plan that is there, that they do not go by that, which is not right. So you have to go by the lesson plan, and you have to make it enjoyable, and you have to make sure that you read, you research, you find out. Teaching is not just a vocation today. Teaching is a profession, and take it very, very seriously. Take it very seriously. As I said earlier, there are, you go to class, people will say, I want to become an engineer, doctor, lawyer, a chartered accountant, I want to become, I want to do MBA, I want to do whatever. There's not even 1% of people who say that I want to become a teacher. And that's the saddest part. That's not one of the aspirations of children to become teachers. So, how can we do that? How do we do it? How? So, please remember, teachers, students have to look up to you and say, wow, what a person. This is a teacher and I want to become like her. That's how it should be. And we have to, please empower yourselves. You are the one who can empower yourself by making sure that you do just the right thing. And please remember, a teacher's life is not just about the school that you know, are very nice in school. What your social media shows, if you are, you can go to a beach and you have every right to wear a bikini and swim because you are a human being, and in the beach you're not going to wear a sari and swim. You will wear your swimming costume, but who's asking you to post those pictures on social media? Why? Everybody does that. You have to do what you have to do, but please be sure that you garner the respect of your students and your parents. Don't do anything in your personal life also that people look down on you. You have a responsibility. I'm sorry, you have a responsibility. Otherwise, don't become a teacher.
Thank you, ma'am. I think the last point that you mentioned is very valid, and students do actually notice all these things. A teacher's social media account, what they are doing. If somebody says that you should not smoke, and the person is posting a photo that like they're having a cigarette, it kind of just gives very mixed signals, and the kids are not going to respect that teacher anymore. Anyway, let me just go to the next question. We just have a couple of more questions before we wrap up. It's from the principal of Chauranji High School, Harshita Dasani. Leadership is such an important aspect. How can we inculcate leadership qualities into our students?
Again, I would say, see, you can have uh, the prefectorial body that you have, the office bearers that you have. Start making your children a part of all decision making. Say, for example, what we do is, if the next batch of children who are going to come and take over the school council, we ask the children to suggest the names. They are the ones who interview the next lot of children, and they suggest to us that these are the children who we think are very, very good. So if we need, say, 5 senior prefects, they may give us the names of 15 prefects or 20 prefects, but out of those 20 prefects we choose 4 or 5 or 10, whatever. Over and above that, when we make the school timetable, we do ask children. They look at the timetable and they do say that, ma'am, here change, this change, that change, and we allow them to do that. There are a whole lot of student-led initiatives in our school. One is, of course, the school fest, where we do nothing. We actually do nothing. It's the children who do it. It's called Utopia. It's by far the biggest fest in the city, at least. Everybody looks forward to it. And I can assure you, I just go there as a guest. I go there as a guest, and they have, I mean, the kind of inter-school events that happen. And let me tell you, the premier schools of Calcutta, West Bengal, and India participate in that. And this time it was international. There were 3 schools, 5 schools from, one from Russia, one from UK, and 3 from Germany who participated. So that is one thing, and they do everything. We do nothing. Then there is THS MUN, Model United Nations, which again we do nothing. Then there's something called Entreprise, which they do, entrepreneurship business test, which they do. We do nothing. We actually do nothing. Then there's a grievance cell. In the grievance cell, children are the ones who take decisions, because a number of times, there are parents and students, they come and tell us certain things which, if I had to tell a student, the child would feel probably very, very upset and very sad. So this is a grievance cell where all the grievances Of teachers, students, everybody goes through that cell. And it's the students who decide whether the teacher is right, whether the student right, whether the management is right, whether the principal is right, and what punishment to be given and what they decided. So I think that's how you make leaders. You don't have to tell them that we're giving you leadership, a class, but we do have this thing, another program where we have a school finishing school program where we call a whole lot of people to our school, and who are, maybe it could be fitness trainer, it could be television anchor, it could be somebody from the IT industry, somebody from, we call people very, very senior people who talk to them about various professions, who talk to them how to, communicate well, how to stay fit, all that.
Thank you, ma'am. We'll take the last question. There are many questions being asked. I thank everybody for being so enthusiastic and sharing your thoughts and asking your questions on this subject. We won't be able to take up all of it. I'm really sorry about it. However, you can post these questions on our website and we will work along with Seema ma'am and get you a response for your questions. We'd like to get you all the means and modes that you need and to get any clarity on this particular topic. Ma'am, we'll take the last question. This is from Radhika from Edu Glory. How shall a leader measure his or her own performance at work?
That indeed is a tough question because it becomes very difficult to find out once you are in this chair. Nobody tells you that you are wrong. No one tells you that you are wrong. So even if you do something wrong, and in fact, this is how we talk to each other. The moment I say, okay, can we do this, and everybody would say yes, so I say we're not going to do this. I don't want people around me who always say yes. We want people who say no and who say this is not the right thing for the school. So now everybody is trained. They all know that if you say yes, Seema ma'am will say no, we will not do it. So, ma'am, the best way is, as I said, it has to be an appraisal form. Like an appraisal goes for everyone, an appraisal, self appraisal, and an appraisal, observation appraisal goes to everyone. I think it's very important to be confident about it before your management says that, go try and see what people think about you. You do it yourself. So make an appraisal form like the others, give it to the teachers, and I'm sure I do get about, say, 15-20% people are unhappy, but maybe 80% are happy. Or it's the other way around. Whatever, whichever way, whoever you feel, take a meeting with people, find out. Say, teachers, don't be, if they are, um, if they listen to you because they are fearful of you, there's no fun. If they listen to you because they respect you, then there's a lot of fun. So it is much better like that. Talk to them, be very calm with them, and maybe they won't say it in public. Call one teacher at in your office and call them and ask them, what is it that I can change? Please tell me, I need help. There's nothing wrong with doing that. We actually need help because nobody, you know in age also you become very senior, so at home also there is nobody to tell you that you're very wrong all the time. Nobody tells you at all times, you're doing something wrong, you're doing something wrong. Like little children, we are, they're told all the time. So there comes an age and stage in life when nobody guides you and nobody tells you, so that is the time when you have to talk to your colleagues and tell them, please help me, I need help.
Thank you, ma'am. I had closed the Q&A session, but I have to take this last one because this has come from your school. It's from Ashmita Das Gupta from the Heritage School. Her question is, as an amazing leader yourself, who motivates you to be the leader that you have been?
So, Ashmita, people like you, everyone here in the school motivates me to work because I think we, um, you know, our school is a little different because I think we have a brilliant set of teachers. Everybody is out and out to work harder than what I expect them to do. This is something amazing. This is something brilliant in our school. No teacher ever says no to any work. In fact, you delegate some work, and if I expect, you know, 10 out of 20, they'll do 20 on 20. I mean, if I expect them to do, whatever amount of work, they would do more research. And I don't know how this happens. Ashmita herself is busy with she teaches the pre-primary classes, and she is an RJ. She was an RJ before, the radio jockey. She's a brilliant singer. She's brilliant at communication. She's brilliant at writing. I mean, I can't tell you what all she does. I mean, and she's not the only one. Everyone's like that. I think we're just blessed. Thank you, Ashmita, for that question. People like you motivate me to do better and do more.
I'm sure Ashmita is going to be very happy with that response from you as well. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, all the audience, for being so active and asking all the questions that you have. And thank you, Seema Sapru ma'am, for a very insightful session. It was lovely to hear all your experiences on the topic. I would just like to ask you to share your closing remarks and key takeaways of this session for the audience.
Um, it's been wonderful being a teacher. I think the best decision that my parents and I took for myself was this, that I wanted to be a teacher. And uh, so everyone who's listening to me, try this profession. It's so fulfilling. It is wonderful to be among students. Young people energize you so much, and they have this ability to transfer their energy and their enthusiasm to you, because of which you come back to school every morning thinking that today I'm going to do this and today I'm going to do that. And so please start taking teaching as a profession more seriously, and I can assure you, you will never ever regret it. So, and of course, you become a leader. You have this opportunity to experience everything that you did as a child. You can play sports, you can do activities, you can teach, you can dance, you can do everything with children because you're a teacher and you're in a school. So that's it. Teaching is the best. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It was an absolute pleasure to hear your words today, and I'm sure that whether to be a teacher or not, I think ma'am has already motivated you to be a teacher, so you just need to go for it. Thank you, ma'am, for taking out time and being with us here today. Thank you very much, and thank you all the audience for joining us live today for this session. Until we meet next time, this is me, Mary, signing off from all of you. A very good day to everyone.